What's the point of being in politics, John Smith used to say, if you can't speak up for the people who can't speak up for themselves? And it was those ordinary rank-and-file Labour workers and supporters who came forward with their floral tributes all day today to the man they'd expected to be the next Prime Minister. Only last night, Mr Smith had been celebrating at a fundraising dinner with his party's more opulent backers, by all accounts on sparkling form. But soon after 8 this morning he was taken ill and rushed to Bart's Hospital. Confirmation of his death came soon after 10 o'clock.
At 8:05 this morning, Mr John Smith collapsed at his home in the Barbican, where immediate resuscitation was attempted. We believe he had a massive heart attack. An ambulance was called and arrived at 8:15. The ambulance arrived at St Bartholomew's Hospital at 8:40 a.m. Resuscitation attempts, which had commenced prior to arrival, were continued at Bart's. Despite full medical attention to Mr Smith, he was pronounced dead at 9:15 on the 12th of May.
At Westminster, stunned and grief-stricken MPs comforted each other as best they could at the passing of a man who'd worn the mantle of leadership as if it had been tailored for him. All sections of the party mourned. Even media eyes were damp, and the tributes rolled in.
He's a man of superb abilities and a really fierce commitment to social justice. Indeed, the speech he made last night, I was with him last night, was testimony to all that. And whilst everybody knew that he'd had a heart attack, he'd made a good recovery, he went climbing these mountains, and everybody assumed, never had reason to think other than he was going to be the next Prime Minister. And he would have made a damn fine Prime Minister too.
He'd come into the job fitting it perfectly. His dignity, his mind, his bearing, his solemnity and his sense of humour made him, I thought, ideal for the task and seemed to bring great weight to our discussions.
Another former Prime Minister had seen Mr Smith as one equipped for membership of that exclusive club.
I always felt that his calm judgment, his reasonable approach, the sense of proportion to which has been referred to, that he had in his conduct and his concern about public affairs, eminently fitted him to lead our great party.
I regret to have to report to the House the death of the Right Honourable John Smith, QC, member for Monklands East.
As the Commons met in sadness, the day's business suspended in respect, many put the emphasis on John Smith's integrity. Others concentrated on the parliamentary skills of a leader who'd combined a safe pair of hands with a devastating wit.
When I think of John Smith, I think of an opponent, not an enemy. And when I remember him, I shall do so with respect and with affection. And when I think of his premature death, I shall think of the waste that it has brought to our public life.
The Prime Minister paid tribute too to the amiable fellow gladiator he met behind the scenes after their bruising battles.
Inevitably, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition have to conduct business in private and on confidential matters. Perhaps I might say to the House, whenever we did, I always found him courteous, fair-minded and constructive, but also tough for what he was seeking and what he believed in. We would share a drink, sometimes tea, sometimes not tea.
Labour's deputy leader insisted that for all the bank managerly appearance, John Smith had been no sober sides, and she quoted the end of his final private speech last night.
He looked at the assembled gathering and he said, and I quote, "The opportunity to serve our country. That is all we ask. Let it stand as his epitaph."
Paddy Ashdown regretted the injustice of a talent snuffed out so close to fulfilment.
In politics, he showed a dogged determination in the face of adversity and challenge. Madam Speaker, we have lost today one of the foremost parliamentary talents of our time. a powerful advocate for the politics of progress in Britain, and a thoroughly decent and deeply gifted man.
Even those in his party who didn't share all Mr. Smith's views paid heartfelt tributes.
Inside him burned the flame of anger against injustice and the flame of hope that we could build a better world.
House is finished for the day. Okay, house is finished.
Few could recall a death which had so devastated the Westminster community. John Smith was no softy. In debate he gave little quarter. But as all those who grieved today recalled, he fought his political battles without rancour or malice. There was anguish among those who'd worked closely with Mr. Smith in his determination to make Labour a party of government again, and who'll now become the claimants to his legacy of a 20% lead in the polls.
It's just heartrending news. It's going to devastate everyone who knew him. He had this extraordinary combination of strength and authority and humour and humanity. And all of us who knew him closely, personally, will mourn him. I think the whole of the country will feel the loss, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Elizabeth and the family. It is simply devastating.
I think John Smith would want us to continue the work that he started. He helped rebuild the party. He brought us to a position where we could have been in power. He would have been a tremendous Prime Minister, who would have been a reforming and radical Prime Minister, true to his great Christian principles, and with a determination to get things done. And I think he'd want us all to continue the work that he started, but is so unfortunately being prevented from finishing.
Labour won't campaign again until after the funeral. The other parties, lowering flags to half-mast in respect, have called off their Euro-electioneering too, at least until next week. Tonight, as the dead leader's office at Labour headquarters filled with flowers, there was deep sadness over the passing of a man denied his chance to battle for number 10. John Smith died with his work only half done. He was pacing himself carefully, too slowly for some party critics, refusing to reveal Labour's policies too early and content to be judged by results. Battles will resume, but tonight all in politics are grieving with the family he leaves behind. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Westminster.